Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The New Orleans Saints have their head coach. It's Kellen Moore. By now, you probably know that. Saints made it official on Tuesday via press release. And I think my thoughts on Kellen Moore are similar to what a lot of you probably think about Kellen Moore. There's a lot of excitement there. Guy was just the offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champion, a top 10 offense in every category except passing. 8th in total, 7th in scoring, 2nd in rushing, and then 29th in passing. It's just how they were able to win. But it's a little exciting because of the many different ways we've seen Kellen Moore's offenses go. In Dallas, they were very pass-heavy with Dak Prescott and those receivers. Obviously, you had Justin Herbert in L.A. a year ago with the Chargers, and then this year, really riding Saquon Barkley in a run-heavy offense. So the ability to be multiple, but being a good play caller, a successful play caller, isn't the only thing you need to be a good head coach. Mike McDaniel in Miami is a good play caller. When they've been healthy and Tua has been healthy, and they've had Tyreek and that thing going, they've been a fun, exciting offense. He's not been a great head coach. A big part of that is also culture and staff. I think Kellen Moore is going to be fine when it comes to culture. And I'm looking at a guy that, as a quarterback, was 50-3. He became the first, and I get it, it's Boise State. It's a G5 school in the Mountain West. I get it. Dude still won 50 games. I don't care if it's G5, Pop Warner, D3, JUCO, don't matter. 50-3, you're a winner. Dude is a winner. I like that a lot. So I'm not so worried about Kellen Moore's ability to create culture. I do a little bit wonder about his age. At 36, right? We know the story. He played against Derek Carr when Kellen Moore was at Boise and Carr was at Fresno. Everybody knows that story by now. But you got a dude at linebacker in DeMario Davis who's as old as the head coach. I mean, these dudes like DeMario and Cam Jordan, these are your team leaders, but are they going to fall in line? I would assume they will. I mean, they got the C on their jersey. But it is something worth asking, right? But I think, I don't know, none of us do. None of us knows. But I think they'll be fine as far as culture. The other big question is, can he hire a staff? Can he identify good coaches and put them in positions so that this team can succeed? Because one of the things that I love about having a guy that controls one side of the ball is you never have to worry about that side of the ball if he's doing his job. Right? It's always the concern. Like the question in Detroit this year. You hire Dan Campbell. Campbell's not a coordinator. He's a culture guy, and he hired 2 really good assistants in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Knocked it out of the park. Okay, in 1 year, both of those guys are gone. Now what? It's a giant question. It's like in New Orleans when Sean Payton was here, it didn't matter if your OC left. As long as you had Payton, you had the guy who had the keys to the car offensively. But he had to hit defensively. And he did it with Dennis Allen. And he did it with Greg Williams. And not so much with Steve Spagnuolo and Rob Ryan, right? And even though you had Peyton and Breeze, when you missed on the DC, you had good offenses, but boy, did your defenses struggle and you were sub 500. So can Kellen Moore hire good assistants? That's going to be a gigantic question. And Ian Rappaport was on the Insiders on the NFL Network, gave a couple of names to watch early on in this process for assistants that could be joining Kellen Moore in New Orleans.
As far as his staff goes, Doug Nussmeier is his quarterback's coach in Philadelphia. I know would be considered a strong candidate to have a big role on the offensive staff, perhaps offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. They got to go through the process there. The defensive coordinator should be a little more open, but I do know that Brandon Staley, former Chargers head coach who came up as a really strong, kind of a hotshot defensive coordinator candidate, he's going to get a long look there. And, I know people say, like, well, do they have time? Like, can they hire a good staff? Everyone, like, the people who are on the staff probably have some idea that they'll be there. They're waiting. The Saints are going to be fine with Kellen Moore as their head coach.
And the Saints are going to give Kellen Moore time and money to build a staff like he needs to. So if you have someone that wants to elevate, there's a great opportunity there. Now, Staley's interesting because this year he was the assistant head coach with the 49ers after he got fired by LA with the Chargers. So assistant head coach, but not a coordinator on either side of the ball. The 49ers just hired Robert Saleh back as their defensive coordinator. So, yeah, it would make sense that Staley might want to go be a coordinator again. So does he join Kellen Moore? Oddly, it would just be a role reversal. It was Staley in LA as the head coach who hired Moore as his OC. In this instance, it would be Moore as the head coach hiring Staley as his DC. But Staley has a long... He's still a relatively young guy at 42 years old. As old as me. Relatively young. It's a relatively young guy. Relative to Kellen Moore, he's older. Kellen Moore's 36. But this is a guy who coached in college and then made his way into the NFL in 2017. Outside linebackers with the Bears for 2 years. Outside linebackers with the Broncos for a year. DC with the Rams in 2020. After 1 year as DC with the Rams, became the head coach of the Chargers. And he was the Chargers head coach for 3 years. And had some early success. They just had some end-game gaffes where they just choked away one-score games. 9-8 his first year, 10-7 his second year, then 5-9, and he was fired in LA. But I like the idea of getting a coach that has head coaching experience on staff that might be able to help with some of those things that come along with being a head coach that Kellen Moore hasn't experienced. So, yes, I like going and getting a more experienced veteran coach, even at 42 years old. But Staley's been a head coach in the NFL, which helps to have that experience on staff. Doug Nussmeier is the other guy that he mentioned there, that Rappaport mentioned. Nussmeier, this is one that, listen, for a very obvious local tie, that makes a lot of sense. His son Garrett is the quarterback, at LSU. Bringing Doug closer to Garrett would make a lot of sense. Doug has ties to the organization. As we know, he came into the NFL when he was drafted by the Saints back in 1994. He was with the Saints from 94 to 97. Became a coach in 2001 in the CFL with the BC Lions. He was with Ottawa. And he has made his way through the ranks, both college and pro. From Michigan State to the Rams, to Fresno State, to Washington, to Alabama, to Michigan, to Florida, then to the Dallas Cowboys, then to the Chargers for a year. Chargers for a year with Kellen Moore, and then to the Eagles. So Kellen Moore, and by the way, was with Dallas earlier. So Doug Nussmeier and Kellen Moore overlapped. When Kellen Moore was the OC in Dallas, Doug Nussmeier was the quarterback's coach. So they overlapped in Dallas. They overlapped with the Chargers in 2023, and then this year in Philly. So every year since 2018, Doug Nussmeier and Kellen Moore have been on the same staff. You have some great synergy there with those two guys, and obviously Doug Nussmeier played quarterback in the NFL as a respected coach at every level he's been. I would love that hire if it's Doug Nussmeier. The other name that we've heard so far is one more Eagles assistant whose name is Kevin Patullo. So we had this up earlier today at LouisianaSports.net if you want to go read about it. But Jeremy Fowler from ESPN was the first to report it. Said Kevin Patullo is a name to file away. Patullo was the associate head coach and pass game coordinator with the Eagles this year and could very well be a name that Kellen Moore is interested in bringing to New Orleans, but also could be the guy that Nick Sirianni promotes internally to be the OC in Philly with Kellen Moore leaving for New Orleans. Another guy who's a young guy. He's 43, so he's a year older than Brandon Staley, but he's been in the NFL since 2007. 1 year was an exception. In 2017, he coached 1 year as a defensive analyst with Texas A&M, but every other year since 2007, he's been in the NFL. The last 3 seasons with the Colts, the last 4 with the Eagles. He'd also been with the Chiefs, Bills, Titans, and Jets. So he's been around the league. That's another NFL seasoned coach that's still a relatively young guy who could join Kellen Moore's staff. So some of the names worth keeping an eye on as Kellen Moore now starts to build his staff. And, I think that's going to be the big question for Kellen Moore is build your staff, build the culture, and even more important than that, start to get this roster back in shape where you can compete. The big question is how much of that is going to be Kellen Moore, how much of that is going to be Mickey Loomis, how much of that is going to be the two in tandem. When Sean Payton was the coach, he was intimately involved in all those decisions about personnel. You get the sense that maybe that wasn't the case with Dennis Allen. What's it going to be like with Kellen Moore? We'll start to find out in short order. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.